这一场是实力传播天娱传媒给我们带来的新生的力量 2.0。那今天我们很荣幸请到实力传播全球首席执行官 Mr. Steve King. Please welcome Global CEO of ZenithOptimedia, Steve King.
Hi, good afternoon, Ni hao. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I'm very honored to be here at the ROI Festival. I accepted the invitation nearly 6 months ago, but the timing is fantastic because, as you may know, our agency ZenithOptimedia was awarded Media Agency of the Year, which is a great accolade, and I'd like to congratulate anyone in the audience from ZenithOptimedia, any of our lovely clients, our wonderful staff, and our fantastic media partners. So really a big congratulations to them. It's a coincidence that I'm here, but it does mean that I have to come back next year if you'll invite me. As you've heard, my name is Steve King. I try and be the global CEO for ZenithOptimedia. And what I'd like to do is take some time today to talk to you about our agency's relationship with China, which, as you know, goes back many, many years, and why our new positioning, we've always been known as the ROI agency, and why our positioning as live ROI, the live ROI positioning, we think has a real relevance and saliency for brands and clients in China, helping you connect with consumers in a much more effective way. And I think, as you know, we have a very long-standing relationship with China. It is 18 years since my first visit here, and since we set up just over 16 years ago, and we were the first global agency to set up in China. So we have certainly lived the journey over the last decade and a half, and it's obviously a huge strategic priority, as it is for us, as it is for all of our global competitors. It's our third biggest market by revenue, and obviously with huge growth prospects, which is why we've made the decision to make a massive investment in talent, in bringing some of the best people around the world to work here in Shanghai and Beijing and Guangzhou. Many of you will know our wonderful CEO, Stephen Chang. Is Stephen here? He's at the back there. You're going to hear from him in a moment. Stephen has been with us on our journey for the whole of the last 16 years, has Terence Jung, and we've been joined over the last few months by some of our best talent from around the world in the digital and strategic area. And we've got McKim Chickley, we've got Stephen Farquhar, we've got Matthias Chalou, all of whom are new to the company, which shows the unrelenting desire to have the very best talent available to us around the world, helping us draft a more successful business with greater relevancy for our clients. The change in China since we started out has obviously been incredible. Some of the most emblematic movements have been in this country's media infrastructure and in its consumption patterns. It also what makes China so exciting and so unique compared to everywhere else in the world. It's safe to say that China is already the world's preeminent digital society. I'm sure there's no presentation that can encapsulate what's happening in China without some statistics, and this is no exception. But I think it's just worth touching on some of those. And I know you're all used to these, but when I present these to some of the other markets in our global network, they're staggered by the sheer scale of the digital growth that has happened here. 7 out of every 10 internet users watch online video. We estimate by 2015, more than 700 million people will be watching online video regularly across China. 91% of China's netizens have visited a social media site in the past 6 months, and that's almost over 20% higher than the figure in the US and 3 times higher than the figure for Japan. The number of people spending 3 hours or more on the web already vastly outstrips those spending the same amount of time on TV. And we can see the explosion that's happened in mobile. Most of the rest of the world, UK, the US, we're waiting for the mobile market to kickstart, and yet that's already happened here with explosion in popularity at apps such as from Sina Weibo and Tencent's Weixin. And this is why we need to frame a new solution to provide for clients. We don't just need digital solutions, we don't just want specialized skills, we need integrated solutions for a new digital landscape. And nowhere does that matter more than here in China. That's why we've suffused our ROI positioning with a live ROI positioning and approach to how we tackle clients' issues and problems. We use live, up-to-date digital data, such as Baidu search insights or proprietary tracking tools, to give us an active understanding of a brand's key challenges. We dynamically serve ads through paid, owned and earned solutions that work together to engage in consumers, not just talk to them, but actually engage with them. And thirdly, we monitor performance with likes, views, shares, leads, comments and sales in real time through leading-edge tools. So these are the three components that we try to put together in terms of serving up live ROI. It starts with active understanding. It then culminates in delivering dynamic engagement that is relevant and exciting to consumers that they want to engage with, and then importantly, measuring that in real time. Now, during last year's ROI Festival, those of you who are here might recall Stephen Chang presenting a paper on what he called about the new power. He was referring to people born in the 80s and 90s whose behaviours and attitudes were so hugely different from those of a previous generation, those born in the 60s and 70s, and such will be their importance and pervasive influence on Chinese society that we dubbed this new group the New Power Generation. And last year, we were able to show you, Stephen showed you, our own touch points, our proprietary global research technique to underline the importance of these digital channels across this group. As a generation, this new power, they trust less. They have less faith in what advertising tells them. They are more acquisitive, and they are considerably more connected. These figures represent all of these traits, for they show a generation who turn less to traditional passive communication, but instead they want to discover for themselves about a brand's claims. They want to check the authenticity through paid search, through its own website, or even what other people are saying on blogs or Weibo. So we thought, how can we therefore take this thinking a little bit further for this year? As you may know, Touchpoints, which we started in 2004, has grown into be the richest and deepest form of ongoing consumer research available to any of the media holding companies. We've interviewed over 600,000 consumers in 46 countries and have applied the learnings to over 150 clients. And it makes the ideal tool to take Stephen's work from last year one step further and see how we can apply this live thinking to this group. We know digital, of course, as a whole is important, but specifically, how can we better engage this generation? Exactly what channels most? How do we make investments decisions amongst these different channels? And how do we construct a digital ecosystem around them that suits their patterns and their needs? Fortunately, Touchpoints provides huge advantage in giving us some navigational help in helping us identify the best way to reach these consumers. The simple answer, when we summarise the learnings that we've taken from the most recent global touchpoint that we then adapted here for China, is two key headlines. It's firstly about social, and secondly, it's about content. If we want to truly engage with this new power generation, we must play where they play, in the social realm, and we need to do that with compelling material that truly pulls the consumers in, not just pushes messages out to them, assuming that they are passively going to receive those messages and retain them and act on them as their forebears, as their parents did. There are, of course, important platforms the world over, but in China we see a real differentiation, and we see how the research really makes the digital landscape stand out and have real points of differentiation. Unfortunately, we have the touch points research, which allows us to now objectively analyse how we can contrast the effect of these different channels with the rest of the world. So the first, if we look at the influence of digital display, you'll see here, this is from for those of you who've seen our touch points research. So we have on this barometer on the far left-hand side, we've got low influence, so media which actually have a low influence on consumers. On the right-hand side, high influence. So if you're an advertiser or you're a brand, you want to have the highest possible influence, because we know that it's the influence that creates the excitement about a brand and engagement. So you can see here, we've just shown the contrast between the global norm that exists and that in China. So we're looking at a differential. The standard global index is 31. Here in China, Touchpoint shows that digital display is the bedrock of media influence with an index of 42. But as I said before, the two key standouts are social and content. So we just want to show you the two figures for those two criteria. So first of all, if we look at video content, so again, we can look at the difference of criteria that exist globally with a much more voracious appetite for content that exists here in China. The index here is against 40 in China, against 32 globally. And we also know from tracking this over time that this differential is accelerating rather than becoming closer to the global norm. And thirdly is the one with social. And it won't surprise you that here in China, the influence of social is even more interesting and pervasive than elsewhere. China's consumers believe in the opinions of others more than anywhere else in the world as they are making purchasing decisions. The use of social media in itself is well documented, but what this shows us is a vast potential as an influential and highly powerful communication tool. So the statistics are obviously very interesting. They tell us that the scope for creating a whole new communications template in China, built on the pillars of social media and great video content, is absolutely enormous. But we need to know how to do this best. How do we make content that people want to engage with? How do we then properly socialize this? How do we guarantee, importantly, that this happens at scale? And to address these questions, I'd like to take out of our research and look for inspiration for our partners both in China and around the world. We work, fortunately, with some of the greatest brands who are already starting to explore these thoughts, and I'd like to offer you some of their thinking on how they can make these two concepts of social and content work well together. I'm shortly going to show you two examples, two short videos from clients of ours who we believe have really worked out how to use this blend of content and social work. Firstly, I'm going to show you an example from HTC, the handset company. Then I'm going to follow up by Verizon, the American telcos company. They've both successfully engaged a young audience with compelling content that, importantly, has then become socialized, but in each way, they've approached it in an entirely different and highly relevant way. Simple lessons to be learned, we believe, in how these can be this type of thinking and this approach can be readily applied to other modern communication solutions. So the first example is that for HTC. This comes with one of China's most successful pop singers, Zhang Jie, and we launched a new handset for HTC. Handset was called HTC One, and the song that was commissioned was called One Chance. Many of you will know the song. It became #1 in three of the top radio charts. It achieved 2.8 million views on China's video sites and launched the HT website, encapsulating these two key dynamics, both fantastic content relevant to its audience, and then we allowed the audience to have such an engagement with this, the audience became the distributor and the accelerator for this content, and then socialized it amongst nearly 3 million of their friends. I'm first of all going to show you the HTC video.
一个微笑，一次拥抱，能让心靠近，是鼓励。失败、恐惧、挫折、打击、迷途、冷眼，不过是经历，让我见。Hello， 大家好，我是
Okay, so that was the really terrific example from HTC from here in China. I then thought, as we have the X Factor launching in China, I'd show you how Verizon is the leading US telco company. And in this case, you'll see how they've embedded themselves in the US edition of X Factor, which was the #1 pop show for young talent last year, which ran into this year. And what they've done, rather than just taking content, they've actually embedded a new app, which they've actually used and then embedded in the show itself. So I think a terrific example of how they've actually used their technology application and then amplified that through the huge audience that was generated via X Factor as part of the voting process.
Last week, the X Factor has partnered with Verizon to bring you new ways to vote and to get involved with the show while we're live on air. One of them is the Extra Factor app. Taryn Southern is out in the app control room. Hi Taryn, what's going on?
Thanks, Steve. So this is the new Extra Factor app. Lots of cool functions. First, you can tell everybody what you think about the show. You can be the Verizon 5th judge. All you have to do is move the bars while the acts are singing live, and you can give your opinions on their style, their song choice, and their actual performances. Then you can share everything on Facebook. Now, if you have a Verizon Android device, you gotta check this out. It's called Verizon Live View, and it gives you exclusive access live to all the cameras that are around the studio and backstage while the show is going on. You can check out the contestants as they get ready to go on stage. You can watch the dancers rehearsing in front of two-way mirrors. You can even see the audience. And when voting opens up at the end of the show, you can use Verizon Touch Voting. On your Verizon Android device, you simply touch the artist's picture and your vote is in. It makes voting for your favorites even easier. The Extra Factor app puts you at home, right at the center of the show. All right, back to you, Steve.
Thanks, Taryn. How good was that? If you want to download the app, go to the xfactorusa.com to learn more. Simon, this Extra Factor app, it's a big deal, yes?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to vote, for instance, for my girls, you just go onto this, touch the screen, and the vote goes through. And I also have to say, Verizon, some of the best new commercials I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
That's because you're in every single one of them.
Other contestants are available for voting. Okay, back to the fight for your votes. Up next, it's one of the boys, L.A. Reid.
Okay, so I think you can see in both those cases how we've really used dynamic engagement, and that came after the active understanding. So you start with understanding about the consumer. That allows you to then build up the dynamic engagement, 2 of the 3 pillars of live ROI. The third part is active understanding, is real-time performance. How do we actually measure the performance that we're getting out of this, this dynamic engagement? And in order to do that, it's the final stage. So we wanted to find a fast, smarter tracking solution that allows us to do just that. And this is an example that we've taken from Social Tools. Social Tools gives us a live tracking of a brand's performance across a host of different digital platforms and can measure that success in a number of different ways, from likes to views to deeper engagement metrics. Critically, it can benchmark your client's campaign performance against their key competitive set. And that's the main usage that clients are making of Social Tools, is actually looking at how their brand compares amongst their engaged consumers with that of their competitors. As you can see from the dashboard, it's a completely different way of tracking campaign metrics. Social Tools provides a database of about 14,000 Facebook pages, 1,500 Twitter accounts, and over 1,000 YouTube brand channels, operational in 106 countries and 104 different categories. The good news is I'm pleased to say, is that Social Tools is currently being adapted, and during the start of 2013, our planners will have access to this socialized content campaigns that run across China, and we will be able to use these Social Tools in a highly applicable way. So we'll be able to measure the social networks, microblogs, and content platforms that exist here with the same efficacy that we've been able to do in some of the international markets. So watch this space, probably the most exciting development that we're going to have for our operations and for our clients next year. So finally, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. We're very excited about our live ROI positioning with its 3 component parts. We feel it's exactly the right approach for a digital world, and as you saw, we're already bringing some real examples about how we can bring those 3 components together, about active understanding, dynamic engagement, real-time performance. But if you don't believe that content matters, or live content in particular, I'd like you to listen to the final part of our presentation today. We've asked a very special guest to finish for us, a guest who knows that great TV can bring fantastic excitement, a guest who single-handedly demonstrates the visceral power of live engagement. So with that, I'll hand over to our very special next guest.
I will not make the same mistake that you did. I will not let myself cause my heart so much misery. I will not break the way you did. It felt so hard. I learned the hard way to never let it get that far. Because of you, I never strayed too far from the sidewalk. Because of you, I'm playing on the safe side so I don't get hurt. Because of you, I try hard to trust not only me but everyone around me. Because of you, I am afraid. 谢谢。
接下来不是我来唱啊，是啊，你们觉得不用拍啊，好不好听？好听吗？想多听一点吗？没有，我问的是关于我老板的演讲，哎，也是好听对吗？来 ，Steve，Danny， 啊，我们这一场的话呢，我来做一个 moderator 啊，一个客座主持哈，我们希望呢，把它做的比较活一点。因为的话 ，Steve King 的话呢，他有说到我们那个 Live ROI 整个概念，所以的话，我们特意请到任容的话呢出来，就清唱一段 live 的一个表演，所以就是相关的。那首先来说的话呢，我希望先简单介绍一下。那 Steve King 刚才是我们全球的 CEO 啊，大家有听过他的演讲。然后的话，任容的话呢是大家应该很熟悉了啊，是2009年的快乐女声的中国全场的总冠军。Danny 的话呢，我相信我说他的中文名字出来的话，你们都应该知道啊，就是大名鼎鼎的龙丹妮，也是那个也是的，哎，谢谢，哎呀，拜，也是大家应该知道超级女声、快乐女声的创始人。那今年这几年的话呢，确实来说很多类似的栏目基本上出来嘛。所以的话呢，其实很多我们听到很多声音是这样子的，也希望的话 ，Danny 的话呢，又有一个更火的内容出来啊。这个我先不打广告哈。我们今天的话呢，在这个内容方面的话呢，是提到 New Power 2.0。New Power 的话呢，其实来说就是相关于一个80后、90后一群非常有实力的这样子的一个受众群。我希望的话呢，任容或者我叫你 Vivi 吧。Vivi 的话呢是80后，所以我希望他现在的身份呢不是一个名人，不是一个歌手。我希望待会有些互动的话呢，你就说说自己，你就代表这一个人群好吗？好，可以。那简单来说的话呢，我希望有几个问题我大家随意说说的。那个首先来说的话呢，我希望 Steve 的话呢可以说说，全球来说的话呢，这个 New Power 这个年代的受众的话有什么特征？ Steve, you would like to talk about your worldwide view in terms of the characteristics of this new power?
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I'm sure the audience would much rather hear from my much too beautiful colleagues on my left than from myself. But anyway, having just heard from me, I think the main difference from New Power is that the consumers now, those born in the 80s and 90s, have become editors of their own content. I think rather than just receiving messages, of which most of the advertising environment and entertainment was based on just knowing that there was an audience out there and we could just push messages out there. Now we've got an opportunity to engage, and if you think about Supergirl, the way that the winner was chosen was obviously based on people's response, and that's a very good symbolic way of how consumers are influencing and engaging. And it's a way of communicating everything about entertainment, about creating new messages. It's about embellishing, and it obviously has huge positive opportunities, but obviously it has some huge, enormous downsides if you try and abuse that connectivity with consumers. Because bad messaging can be travel as fast as good messaging.
Thank you, Steve. Danny, 那你应该很有发言权的。你是创造那个内容来说的话，打动这个人群的，你怎么看法？
可以 ，Hello。喂 ，OK。我觉得我们坐在这里就是以 New Power 啊，因为 New Power 我觉得是没有对我的感觉其实是跟年纪没有关系，跟心态有关。刚才Steve 讲的这个全球的他对 New Power 的一些理解，那在中国其实我觉得 New Power 是一个特别复杂的，很难去一句话去说清的。那在这几年我做的很多，因为我们是做 idol 的一个偶像的一个公司，好像是说你们就是 New Power， 其实我们只是 New Power 之一。因为我对 New Power 的理解应该更多的是来自于一个独立的个体，而这个个体它绝对是有独立的思想、独立的状态，而且这个个体是有创新、有反骨、有热血，然后这个独立的个体是有它独立的价值观，而且现在这个 New Power 是特别对传统的所谓成功是敢去颠覆的。什么是传统的成功？现在的年轻人和现在的 New Power 就说，在我们眼里的成功、功成名就，可能都不是功成名就，是活出他自己的内心的一种价值。所以我对在中国现在这个时代，因为比较复杂，而且比较浮躁的一种情况下，我对 New Power 更多的理解就是对自我的一种认知和肯定。
谢谢啊 ，Danny。那任荣啊，首先恭喜你啊！前2天的话呢，就是拿到那个最具代言价值女歌手奖啊。不过的话呢，就是这个不是得奖发言。我希望的话，你代表一个80后，很年轻，任荣很年轻，你自己怎么看你们这一群 New Power 的呢？
我觉得我们这一群就80后的人来说话，应该是不断的在追求自己、完善自己，并且达到一个自我的一个提升。我觉得只有一句话可以代表我们，就是 I am New Power。对。
以后我们这样子说了哈，是吧？非常感谢啊。那时间关系的话呢，我会继续啊，还有几个题目应该很好的。第二个问题来说的话呢，我希望大家可以看，因为这个是一个广告活动嘛，所以的话呢，我也希望 Steve 的话呢，你可以说一说，就是关于你怎么看法对于那个 New Power 的商业价值。What's your view in terms of for the commercial value, particularly targeting at this New Power?
Okay, I think from running a communications group, we would predominantly have been focused on paid advertising. So we would buy advertising on billboards or on television or radio or on print. I think from a pure communications point of view, the new communications obviously gives you an opportunity to create content with the client, and so you create owned media. And then, of course, if this is successfully distributed via the consumers, it creates earned value. And that's a real accelerator, and it's a way of new brands breaking in very effectively, not just brands, but also, entertainment types, movies, etc. So I think it's a way of breaking the traditional mold of communications just based purely on paid, and it's a much more intuitive way of connecting and accelerating brand messages.
Thank you. 其实不管是 pay on earn 的话，其实都跟整个内容娱乐环境也有相关。那 Danny， 你是那个内容方啊，你怎么看法？
很多人 看到我们都觉得我们是一个做电视的人，所以我其实特别不想别人说我称为我一个电视人，因为我真的觉得这是我这几年做娱乐产品最大的感触，就是说在这个时代，一个产品出来的时候，你再也不要定义它，音乐就是音乐，艺人就是艺人，电影就是电影。这个新媒体就是新媒体，因为我在这个时代，我们为 New Power 就是年轻人创造的每一个产品，它应该都是跨界的，所以我们其实更倾向于做一个跨界的产品，而不是一个单一的产品。应该怎么说呢？我觉得在中国，在 New Power 在中国是有巨大的市场潜力和市场价值的，但是如果想这桶金能挖到，如果客户的投放是精准的，那就必须要这个内容的创作者。这个内容的参与者和互动者和这个内容的运营者，他们是在一个起跑线上来创造这个事情的。那像05年做超女也好，包括我们近2年做的很多大型的活动也好，所有的东西在创造这个 crossover 的这个产品的时候，是每个人自己有一个 new power 的状态，敢于去颠覆它，敢于去摆脱以往的成功。所以我是觉得，只有这3者的思想在一个状态下的时候，我们的投放和我们的创作才是这个。化学反应是爆发性的增长，对。
是啊，你刚才提到那个跨界，其实刚才 Steve 的2个案例里面，大家可以看到的话是跨界的，其实这个方面更多的融合肯定可以看得到，其实，在这样子的情境下，我相信大家的话呢，很感到兴趣，就是说你们怎么看 New Power 的未来，或者是你们的角度，你从内容方，或者是从我们营销方来说，怎么看法 ？So Steve. What's your point of view in terms of looking at the future of this new power?
I think the future is that the power is shifting. So let's just limit ourselves to advertisers. That where that power was in their hands and they control the messaging, and when they put that messaging out, now. It's that messaging, and when people see that messaging and how they receive it and what they think about that is not really in their control. So the new power generation are able to influence that message. They can take those messages, they can add to them, they can change that messaging, and they can react. So the real impact of that is that the new power creates much greater sense of responsibility and care when you're thinking about how you're communicating into this new audience.
那 Steve 说到的话，对于未来的话，有个很重要的那种自我价值、自我显示出来的方法的话，是个很重要。刚才大家也看到 Danny 的话呢，绝对是 New Power 用的工具都是最新的哈，还要打广告啊。那这样子的话，不用打了那这样子的话，其实 Danny 其实我相信，其实在场很多观众的话呢，或者广告界的朋友营销组、广告组都很感兴趣。大家知道你明年有个很大的项目你在这个环节来说的话，你怎么看？从内容来说的话，你怎么看这个对 New Power 的未来呢？
应该说New Power 的未来，当然首先会落到这个脚踏实地，落到明年我们的一些项目上。但是我对 New Power 的理解，我还是说的不是简单的一个节目和一个秀，我对 New Power 未来的理解是更加多元化、碎片化、互动化，然后更加的可能是微支付化，不是大笔的交易，可能是微支付化的一种社会的群发活动，这是从这一点。那从这个角度来看的话，我们来做一个未来的对 New Power 的这个理解，我的理解电视这个媒介，因为我自己做电视，我不能说电视这个媒介它渐渐是处于一个时代的一个
在中国还是很强
对，但是它的发展趋势是会往下走的一个趋势，所以我说明年我们会，比如说刚才看到的介绍的 X Factor 这个节目，可能我们明年也买了他们的版权，我们也会在 X Factor 在 Apps 在上面有做很多深入的这个在移动互联网上的一些合作。
刚才那个案例是美国的
对，所以这是一个点而已。但是我对未来的 New Power 在这个内容上的理解，我是想未来的在移动互联网和年轻的 New Power 是2个极端，内容是2个极端，一个极端就是在虚拟的移动的空间无处不在。可能是零空间，但是又未来无限远的距离，这是一个方向，是它一个极致的方向。另外一个方向就是说面对面的，我跟你就这么近，10米之远、5米之远是肉搏的。 因为我觉得人和人的体验无非是2种，一种是随时我可以去感知和 touch 的，这是在互联网；一种是我可能需要付费，需要我身体力行的，那就是在舞台上的，我跟你只有1米之遥。我觉得很多的娱乐活动可能已经未来越来越少的会出现那种我隔上100米远看一个演唱会，我隔什么什么那样，我觉得这种现象可能会越来越少。而人们对娱乐的感知和体验应该越来越个人化，越来越尊重自己内心的一种感知，所以很可能在中间这些媒介它会比较尴尬，比如说电视。但是电视未来你也不知道会往哪里走，也许它把3个人都融合在一起了，所以可能我们明年比如说当然不会一下子说颠覆把中国电视，但是我是觉得我们都会努力朝这个方向去改变。
谢谢啊。其实我听说现在很多电视台做这些现场的选秀栏目的话，已经准备用这些很新的技术，可以立体投影啊，一些已经可能走了离开了著名歌手跟那个表演者同场的演出啊，我们拭目以待。然后的话，任荣，我想了解一下，这里是从你的角度的话，你怎么看你们这个80后、90后的未来呢
？80后、90后的未来应该是有无限的延伸。那我个人是作为一个歌手，我希望自己在包括表现形式上也好，我是一个喜欢唱快歌、喜欢表达自己热情的人，所以我首先第一点 ，power 必须要延续，然后再去扩大它。然后我自己是一个产品，所以我需要去不断的包装自己，然后跟各种的，比如说网络媒体也好，要有一个互动，多发一些视频。不管是自己的舞蹈视频，还是说一些新的 idea， 都可以发到上面去跟大家做一些交流。这是我认为我能做的未来。
谢谢啊。首先有个小故事我会说说。昨天晚上的话，我们看着任荣的话呢来彩排，我可以跟大家说，很多朋友的话可能觉得80后、90后呢，往往很多负面一点的说法看法。昨天晚上我看到他的话呢，排练非常认真。刚才大家听到了现场所以我觉得的话呢，其实你刚才说到New Power 的话呢，我觉得你们每一个个体显示出来的那个影响很大。我在那个部分的话呢，我又想可能我们剩下时间不是很多，我希望大家可以讨论一个跟广告也相关，跟这个也是有互动的问题。Danny， 我想先请问一个东西，就是说这几年7、8年来，我们这些选秀的也跟这个题目相关的栏目的话呢，我看到的情形是这样子的。中国的这些选秀栏目的话，就是1年、2年、3年就不再火了。我们看到国外的，这里是美国、英国的话呢，比如说美国现在最高收视还是 American Idol，8年、9年、10年都有了。那我觉得这个现象的话就很不一样。我想的话呢，也同时请问一下 Steve 怎么看法？请问一下那个 Danny 什么看法？好吧 ，Danny Lady First 吧，你看看。
我觉得中国老百姓的审美和消费习惯跟美国人是不一样的。首先我想说这一点，所以但是任何一个成功的模式，它在全世界一定它都是 OK 的，这是不可否认的。所以我是觉得任何一个秀，它能不能继续走下去，能不能市场，我们要看这个秀本身在这一年度做完以后，它在市场上获取的市场份额，比如说电视剧收视率，广告那个市场的份额，但是这里面肯定它有一个曲线图示。有个曲线图示，那么对于运营者和这个创作者来说，面对这种曲线图示的时候，你该怎么去坚持？是放弃还是 go on？ 其实美国偶像也有低潮，也一样的是有低潮。然后比如说美国，所以我的理解就是说，应该是说，刚才你说 New Power，New Power 其实说是个好像是一个新词，但是它是每个年代都有 New Power， 每个时代每个历史都有 New Power， 所以关键是我们能不能够引领时代。比如说我注入到这个时代的精神在这个秀里面，这个秀才有可能成功。如果我做的还是10年前的秀，它肯定就 over 了，早就 over 了。所以我的理解就是说，不在乎选秀的高潮和低潮，而在乎你是不是跟现在的每一个个体在充分的互动和沟通，他们是独立的还是屌丝的，他们是什么样子的，你都不真的。所以我觉得更多的是你用一种平和的心态要跟他对话。这个秀我觉得才能够走下去。
谢谢这个一定就是要与时并进一定需要这样子。Steve, you got a question?
Yeah, I think there's a point maybe that hasn't been made about why these talent shows have such a cachet, unique value, and it's because they are broadcast predominantly live, and of course, you know, the whole, and they generate mass audiences. So for advertisers, one of the issues is so much TV is watched on a fast-forward basis, on a time-shifted basis, and one of the huge things and one of the great assets from our perspective is be able to buy into programming that you know that consumers are likely to watch. So live sports, news, but particularly these talent shows, because they are broadcast show live and the audience is watching them at the same time, and then they're blogging or twittering or whatever amongst each other, that has a huge value. So from our perspective, we have a real interest in these genres continuing. I think I would say that in the UK, which I think was probably the first market to have these type of talent shows, I think that there has been a slight decline in the audiences, but they still are always in the top 5 programs that are shown. And I think there's a very practical reason why in the UK, as an example, why that audience decline has happened slightly faster than it has in the US. And it's simply because the amount of available talent is not as great. And you have, if you have a population of 2 billion compared to an audience, a population of less than 100 million, it's not surprising that 95% of the audience is going to generate you more potential talented artists to appear. And that's practically one of the big issues that's happening in the UK, and I see that to a lesser extent in the US, that the number of really fantastic talents that come through is harder and harder to find, particularly when there are 3 or 4 of these type of talent shows. So I can tell you, my family at home, they are all glued to the X Factor, which is running now, and they're looking forward to Britain's Got Talent or China's Got Talent when then comes up. So I think that they are a genre. I think that they have maybe peaked in a mature market like the UK, but I know that the enthusiasm and the whole sort of enthusiasm for participation here in China is much greater. So I think actually you will probably see more longevity for a number of reasons of these type of genres of shows in China than certainly the UK and probably than the US.
谢谢 Steve 的观点啊，那个 live 的话还是很重要哈。然后除了这个之外的话，我觉得 Steve 另外观点的话，就是我们 China got talents 啊，我们很多 talents。说的话呢，其实从这个延伸里面的话，可能我们那个长尾的那种的状态的话，可能更多更久。那接下来的话，我们剩下3分多钟，我希望的话可以每一位可以用差不多1分钟。或者更短，然后的话呢，可以总结一下你们的观点。So Steve, I would like to invite you to have a summary, 1-minute summary about, from a communication agency. How do you look at this?
Okay, I think the combination of this new category of consumers, new audience, new power, and the new channels of communication has honestly transformed our business. Our role was, let's say, until 5 or 10 years ago, we were an executional partner or executional supplier for most of our clients. And that is still the case. We're still judged by our executional excellence. But it's a much deeper relationship now because the clients are realizing that for their brands, they need to really work with the new channels. They need to find new ways of communicating. They need to find new ways of measurement. They've got an opportunity to really amplify their messaging, and they can actually create those messages for the first time. They can get consumers to distribute that, and they can amplify the value of their marketing spend to a level that has never been done before. They can also, of course, destroy the value of their communications as easily. So our role has become much more important, I think. It's become much more exciting. Our business, as you know, has diversified from just being a media buying company to being a strategic partner for our clients. And that is a fantastic, exciting thing. We see so many of companies and sectors around the world that are challenged or being cut. And our particular sector, the communications agency, is one that's had a record year, and it's predominantly out of clients seeking greater help in trying to find the most appropriate navigational route to consumers and the right form of measurement.
Steve 的话不但说到 New Power 很有未来，还说到我们整个行业也很有未来啊。那 Danny， 你的看法呢？
一句话吧，我觉得New Power 在任何时代都具备，所以要创造 New Power 的力量，其实更多的是要寻找 New Style， 就是新的态度，然后在新的态度下面寻找新的体验，具备新的态度和新的体验，这个 New Power 才会有力量，才可能挣钱。
才能够挣钱，对吧？这个很重要哈。那最后呢，任勇我随便你用什么方法哈，就是请问剩下差不多1分钟，你唱出来也可以，好不好啊？假如你喜欢的话，不然的话呢，就你怎么说话都可以，好吧？
可以，但我要先说一句话，就是 Power 呢是有梦想的人。那我认为只要你有梦想，就到中国来，因为 China is New Power 啊。There's a hero if you look inside your heart. You don't have to be afraid of what you are. There's an answer if you reach into your soul, and the sorrow that you know will melt away. You, my hero.Thank you.
剩下18秒钟，我们就这样子结束这个环节，谢谢大家。
谢谢。